The Beavers looking to bounce back after a heartbreaking loss to Washington State. Tonight on #Beavers Football, we're going one-on-one with Ryan Null. We'll look at his season. And will Washington be one of the last teams standing when the playoffs roll in? Plus, how do the Beavers slow down Stanford star Christian McCaffrey? #Beavers Football starts now. Stanford Stadium, the site of tomorrow's showdown between Oregon State and Stanford. The Beavers have not beaten the Cardinals since '09. Can they change that this weekend? Welcome inside Blitz Lad to #Beavers Football. Amanda Maynard, Lindsay Schnell, Nigel Burton, and we're taking a look at tomorrow's big game between Oregon State and Stanford. Beavers have lost some heartbreakers over the last couple weeks. How do you keep this team mentally together after
Heartbreakers. Players in Corvallis would tell you that's an understatement, that they're sick of being so close. But Nigel, this is part of rebuilding a program and starting over, not completely from scratch, but they're running something totally different and they're remaking the roster. We've seen this with Colorado, right? Colorado lost a bunch of heartbreakers before they could actually put teams away this year.
Yeah, I mean, the thing that's typical of watching a remodel basically is what, if we're not going to say this was a rebuild, it was definitely a major remodel, is you see a team that starts off, they will get blown out their first year. They're just trying to figure out where they're supposed to line up and how this is supposed to work. The second year, you'll see teams really keep things close if they're improving, and they might find a way to win one or two, but most of the time you're losing them because you just don't know how to finish, and I think that's what you saw last week against Washington State. In year three is when you're looking to win a lot of those close games, but you may let teams back into games that you were putting them away. And then hopefully by year four is you finally got guys who've been through the battles. They start off young. They're now older players. People understand what to expect, and they're putting teams away.
As we get into that final month of the season, do you sense that they're close to breaking through on a few more wins?
You know what? I think we sensed it weeks ago. I think we got that feeling, really even starting with Minnesota. We saw the team was different. And then they did what a lot of teams did because it's not a linear improvement. There's going to be some ebbs and flows throughout the season. But I think when we saw how they played against Utah and we saw how obviously the Cal win was so huge that, they are right on the doorstep, and they're kind of finding ways to lose in different ways that in the long run are really going to actually help you. Because you'll be able to talk to guys through experience about, hey,
we've been here.
Yeah, we've been here before. We're up 21 against Stanford, say, and now we know we can't relax and we can't get tight. You have to find that balance, or we're behind, but we know we can fight our way back into games like we did against Boise, like we did against Utah. So you kind of have to go through some of that pain to learn how to finish.
The other thing is, I'm at practice every week, and I don't sense that their spirits are crushed yet, which it would be really easy to be in that position, especially, they've lost so many games by such a few amount of points. But I think that they still have confidence, which is really impressive. It's a testament, I think, to Gary Anderson and to the leadership within the program, the players that are making sure the young kids haven't lost focus. So I don't know if they can put it together this year. I mean, I still think they can beat Arizona. I think they're going to win the Civil War. I don't know about this week, but, it's going to be okay. We thought that after Minnesota. I still think that now.
And that shows the growth of this football team because last year, that was a major issue.
Checked out.
I mean, you saw the senior class really abandon this team. And it was a lot of, that's why you saw a slide there at the end, whereas this team, these seniors, these upperclassmen have really done a nice job of keeping everybody together, in addition to, obviously, the coaching staff.
At the beginning of the season, Stanford picked to be a top B Pac-12 North. And here's a look at...
For the first time, picked to win the entire Pac-12 for the first time in college.
That's cold-blooded. I know, Dave. That is a cold-blooded picture.
And here's a look at why some people are saying they are having a down year. These are the categories that they ranked last in the Pac-12 in. Scoring, total offense, passing offense, and turnover margin. So do you guys feel like this is the same Stanford team?
Well, first of all, I think Kevin Hogan was a lot more important to this program than a lot of people realized. People thought when he graduated that they would be fine because it was all about Christian McCaffrey anyway. No, Hogan was a leader. He was a winner. He knew how to get the job done. So they've really been struggling. To me, this has never been a program that I've been blown away by their offense. Defensively, I have not been impressed by them in a lot of moments. But I think that I know that they're still very athletic. They're still very strong. They still have the pieces to do stuff.
Yeah, I'm not sure they're as athletic as they used to be. They always had that one guy who could take the top off of a defense. I don't know who that guy is right now for their passing game, which is why I think they're struggling. In addition to the fact that their offensive line play has been subpar for them, you consider the fact that all those stats that you just saw there, and yet they're still 5-3. Because I think there's an element of when with all the success that they've had there, those guys still think we are still Stanford, right? We still walk in and we can still beat you up, even though maybe that's not really reality. It's more in their head, and I think that's why, you know, what's between your ears and your confidence level is so immense. It can make you better than you really are, or it can make you worse than you really are.
All right, a little later in the show, Lindsay sitting down with Ryan Nall gets his take on the whole Wrecking Nall nickname.
I didn't really think of, I'm going to try to chuck somebody every play. I just kind of like, it's going to take more than one guy to tackle me, That's my mentality is, don't always go down on the first tackle, on the first guy. Try to make it 2 or 3 guys and try to get the extra yard.
And up next, a look at the up and down year of the 2015 Heisman finalist, Christian McCaffrey.
McCaffrey dances to the hole, cuts it back.
Christian's amazing, man. Just everything he does for our team, just as a leader, as a player.
McCaffrey tries to run it, hits a seam.
He's been referred to by many things as kind of like the Swiss Army knife. It comes in a small package, but then it can do everything. He can run it inside, he can run it outside, he can catch it, he can return it. I mean, there's really not much he can't do.
McCaffrey banged up at times this season, dealing with an undisclosed injury. Here's a look at some of his numbers for this season. 781 yards rushing, 207 in receiving yards. Of course, plenty of work in the special teams unit. 6th in the country with 182 yards a game. Coming off a game against Arizona where he played pretty well, 225 yards, 3 touchdowns. But are you seeing the same guy as you did last year?
No, which I find really depressing. Look, on the West Coast, it's hard for someone to win the Heisman, and I thought that McCaffrey had kind of the perfect buildup last year, but he was going to be held to this impossible standard this year, and we're obviously seeing that. But it's just been really hard to watch. I mean, I don't think that he's not as good. His offensive line, as Nigel said, subpar play. People just aren't opening holes for him. I mean, against Washington, it was really obvious. Arizona doesn't play defense, so I'm not really blown away by that. But Nigel, he's still, he leads the conference with 182 all-purpose yards a game. Like, he's still really, really good. You still have to respect him. He's still tough to contain.
Yeah, I mean, if you're averaging 180 yards total offense in game, and that's your average, that's I don't know how many reelies you can throw, and only a guy like Christian McCaffrey could get judged at that and be like, that's really not that good. Everybody in the country would beg to have a guy who's giving you that kind of production on a week in and week out basis. I think it's just like we already talked about. And one, he can hurt you in so many ways. David Shaw really took the words right out of my mouth. He could hurt you in the run game. He can run inside or outside. He can hurt you in the passing game. I think that's the part where he could really kill you. I mean, he's the second leading receiver on their football team. He's the leading rusher.
Which, again, does not say much for their receiving corps.
Well, but it also does say a lot about him because he is a matchup nightmare. I watched him last year in the Pac-12 championship game get matched up with linebackers in the pass game one-on-one, and you actually could see it start to develop before the play started. And it was like watching it's like when you think you're seeing a car wreck about to happen. Like you almost sit there. We started to brace ourselves like, oh, this is going to be bad for SC. Well, then you get to the bowl game in Iowa, you see the same thing, but they drop a safety down. It's like, oh, that's pretty smart. Oh, no, it wasn't. Didn't matter. He beat him too. So, I mean, he can present so many matchup nightmares for you. It's going to be interesting to see how the Beavers try to defend him.
I just want to say my lasting memory of the Pac-12 championship last year was sitting in the press box and hearing Justin Wilcox bang on the wall and say a lot of words that we're not going to say on TV every time McCaffrey got the ball. Because it's one of those, it's the classic, you can't stop him, you can hope to contain him. We all know he's going to get the ball, and yet he still does a lot of the time.
Well, the thing that's really difficult with him, because he's a running back who has wide receiver skills, is you can put him anywhere. Right? I mean, it's difficult enough as a defensive coordinator to try to find a wide receiver that may be on the outside to the right, the outside to the left, in the slot. But when you're dealing with a guy who's a running back that can do all those different things, and you can also hide him in the backfield, and then, oh yeah, by the way, he can also play quarterback, and he's even throwing touchdown passes. I mean, it's one of those things that you can't come up with really a defense, and you just have to make sure that you can out-athlete them to a degree so you can focus on him.
So, I mean, especially in special teams, I mean, do you just kick away from him? Is that
well,
the
one
solution,
would think,
right?
but you'd be shocked. I'm shocked at the number of times the ball does go in his
and like you said, you can tell people to kick away from him, but maybe
yeah, I mean, you tell guys to do a lot of stuff that just happen, you know, like, hey, kick it, and then it's like you kick it right to him. Yeah, I tried to kick it out of bounds. I mean, it's not as easy as you think, so maybe whatever, but I asked Gary Anderson straight up, like, are you going to kick it away from me? And he kind of gave me this look like, really? Yeah, we're going to kick it away from him now. It's like, that's the stupidest question you've ever asked me in a myriad of stupid questions.
You know, and the other thing, though, is that if he does get going in the return game, that gives him confidence, and then he can really get going. And that's a special teams play can turn the game so quickly.
You know what's funny is all these guys who are two-way guys, when they got decimated in the secondary, I was ready to see him line up at corner. Obviously, the only thing that hurt him was because he was hurt. I'm not kidding. It was nothing to laugh about. I look at Adoree Jackson who did it. I look at Charles Nelson who did it. Adoree Jackson, I'll give you, is probably a better athlete, but in terms of football smarts, and I'll take him over Charles Nelson in terms of his athletic ability and smarts and things like that. I really was. I was ready to see five line up, then he got banged up, and he couldn't see it, but I thought that would have been just, he would have been the West Coast version of Jabril Peppers.
That is a smoking hot take right there. Christian McCaffrey in the secondary.
Just saying.
All right, still to come, Stanford making a switch at quarterback last week. Who will the Beavers be up against tomorrow afternoon? And later, Lindsay sitting down with Ryan Nall. She's going to find out which former Oregon State back he models his game after.
Give it to Nall. Nice opener for Ryan. Big hole. Ryan to the second level. 40, 45, trying to pull away. 35, 30, 25, 20, 15, 10, 5. Touchdown, Beavers! Marion gets the ball out to Nall. 15 to the 10, down the left sideline and in. Touchdown, Beavers. Ryan Nall's second TD. Bolden in fly sweep action. Handed off to Nall. Ryan plows over the left side, and Ryan Nall in. Touchdown, Beavers.
An up and down year for Ryan Nall, who's been battling a foot injury. 221 yards versus Cal, and then of course missed part of the game against Utah, missed all of the game against Washington before a resurgence against Washington State. Oregon State certainly happy to have Ryan Nall back at full force in a game that will feature two of the Pac-12's best running backs. Lindsay had the chance to sit down with Ryan Nall to catch up about his season in our Toyota interview of the week.
Ryan Nall up the middle. He could go. Gone. Ryan Nall with the touchdown.
You sort of epitomize like the Oregon State football player when you talk about someone who just wants to get their lunch pail and go to work. Is that something that has always been what you focused on as a player, like growing up?
Yeah, growing up, you know, my dad, you know, always coached me and my brother, you know, work hard. And, you know, things will fall into place. You know, if you do things the right way and you work hard and you work hard enough at it and you really, you know, set your sights on something, you can achieve your goal. And, you know, this was my goal. And, you know, back with the old staff when Coach Riley was here, when he called me that morning after I came down for a half-day camp, I just remember it was like early in the morning, it was like 8 o'clock on a Sunday, and, you know, calls, and I almost broke into tears afterwards. I told my mom, she started to almost cry too, and it was just such an unbelievable moment to happen to me.
This is Ryan Nall, the wrecking Nall, lowering his shoulder and spinning toward the first down.
How much pride do you take in being the wrecking Nall and this nickname of just trucking guys over like old school football? You kind of epitomize 3 yards in a cloud of dust. Is that what you like?
I mean, yeah, I guess. You know, people call me Wrecking Nall. You know, I just kind of take it as it is. You know, I never really think of, you know, oh, I'm gonna try to chuck somebody every play. You know, I just kind of like, oh, it's going to take more than one guy to tackle me, you know. That's my mentality is, you know, don't always go down on the first tackle, on the first guy. Try to make it 2 or 3 guys and try to get the extra yard.
Looks to throw, does Nall out of the backfield, walking in, touchdown.
This program has a history of great backs. Do you have a favorite Oregon State back, one that you would like to epitomize, like model your game after?
Yeah, you know, Steven Jackson, you know, obviously we're the same, you know, same sized kind of back, you know, bigger back, and something you don't usually see, You know, you're starting to see it a little bit more nowadays, but, you know, back then you didn't see it very often. And, you know, growing up watching him, you know, I was really young when he was in here. And, you know, growing up to more middle school, when I look back, watch his tape on YouTube and everything. I look at his highlights before games and stuff. And, you know, that's definitely one of probably the most primary back that I would recognize here at Oregon State.
So any surprise to how he came out and just dominated against Washington State?
Well, I was just impressed at how they ran the ball in general the first half because Washington State, really sells out to stop the run, and they did a great job. You know, they had 165 rushing yards in the first half, I think, but they only finished with 171, so that's not good. But a healthy Ryan Nall is tough to stop, Nigel, because he's so strong.
Well, you know what's funny is we were watching him play, and some guys were making some jokes who just don't know him. And they're, oh, you know, he's one of the guys who's using this old-timey 1950s, I'll be honest with you, white running back saying, oh, he's this guy. And I'm like, no. Like, first of all, this guy was a was a low 22 200-meter guy. So, and I was like, who in this room ran that? Because I know I did. And I was like, you know, and he is a blend of power and speed. He has run away from not just Washington State. He ran away from Cal multiple times. He ran away from the Ducks, that's how they sold their program on speed. If you look at that graphic that we had earlier, the best part of that graphic is he had the 221 against Cal, 32 against Utah. Yeah, that came on one run,
right?
and then he was done.
He was done, yeah.
And so, I mean, that should tell you, I mean, if he can stay healthy, the kind of things that I think he could accomplish there, and you know, I know we always joke about, you know, Lindsay patting herself on the back. I'm going to pat myself on the back on this one, because when he was coming out of high school, I told him, as much as people say you can be a tight end or you can be a linebacker or this, I honestly think you're a running back, because I got a chance to watch him a lot in high school. And he was that guy who did that over and over again. Long runs, run away from guys who were also getting Division I scholarships. And he had that blend of power and speed. So I'm really not that surprised by this.
Okay, this is what I want to know. I get asked this question a lot, and I don't have an answer for it. What kind of pro potential does he have?
You know, it's going to be interesting. I actually think he could. He's not really he's not a one-back guy. He's actually a two-back running back. So he's the kind of guy that if you put him in a system that has a fullback, that has an H-back, that I think he'll do really, really well. He's not really a one-back guy, which is why I think even Gary Anderson it was weird that where do you fit this guy? Because that's just not him. And so he just kind of really has so much talent that he's able to maneuver in a one-back system, but he's a two-back guy, which if you look at the NFL, there's a lot of two-back systems. I think he has a lot of ability, and they're going to drool when they find a guy who's 235 pounds that can run the way that he can.
You know, the thing that is impressive to me about Ryan is that I don't think that within the Oregon State community, like media-wise at least, and I'll take some of the blame for this, people didn't really know much about him, didn't expect much. He's the type of kid that forces you to put him on the field. You know, you can't deny his talent.
And here's the last thing. I think he's going to get way better than what he is. I don't think he scratched the surface on how good he can really be, because he got moved around so much, not only in high school, but even his first year and a half at Oregon State.
Stanford has obviously a defensive star in Solomon Thomas. I mean, how big of a factor is he going to be in trying to slow down Ryan Nall?
First of all, I just want to say I love Solomon Thomas because we bonded earlier this season over a shared love of Beyonce. Look, here's the thing. Solomon Thomas, you know, he has 9 solo tackles for loss this season, including 5 sacks. Even if the Stanford defense isn't as great as we thought, even if this is not what we're used to, the bottom line is that he is an athletic freak, and you have to respect him. Do you have to double team him is my question.
Yes, and matter of fact, I might triple him every now and again. I'm serious as a heart attack. He is the one guy who scares the snot out of you. I've watched him beat multiple double teams in multiple games. I mean, he is a freak. So, yeah, if there's ever a time he's one-on-one, that's when you go over and you scold the offensive line coach, because there's no way he should be by himself.
And a sophomore, I think, maybe?
I think he's a junior.
Yeah, he's a little bit.
Still got some more time. All right, later in the show, we'll discuss the first college football playoff rankings of the season. And after the break, we'll reveal the results of our Twitter poll, which receiver will have the biggest game tomorrow. The Beavers in the Bay Area tonight as they get ready to take on Stanford tomorrow afternoon at Stanford Stadium. Oregon State has yet to beat David Shaw's Cardinals. And we are now taking a look at our standard TV and appliance play breakdown and revisiting Washington State, Nigel.
Well, the thing that I really liked when I really broke this game down was the way that the Beaver coaching staff started offensively this game. I thought the whole point of the game, it wasn't about, a lot of times you'll see offensive coordinators come out in various formations to see how a defense is going to line, see what they, all those different things. Instead, what the Beaver coaching staff did was they said, look, what we're going to do is try to get our playmakers going. So it was all about trying to get Vic Bolden going with quick passes.
Which they did.
try to get Ryan Nall going with the inside game. Try to get Vic going with the fly sweep game. Try to get Marcus McMarion going with the downfield throw. And in the end, that drive was beautiful, and it really set up for a lot of success that happened in that first half. And they tried to get Seth Collins going. That didn't work as well, but the idea was, as opposed to worrying about how a defense is going to line to us, how we can attack, and playing that chessboard game where they're just X's and O's, they took the approach of let's get the ball to our playmakers early, get them involved early, and how can we make them feel good about being playmakers, because that's what we're going to need in this game. And I thought it worked beautifully.
Did you sense that? Well, I was going to say, did you sense that it continued on? Because again, they take a 21, a three-score lead.
Yeah, totally.
Was that the kind of the tone of?
I think so. I think they were playing with a lot of confidence. Victor Bolden, especially, he's taken a lot of flack from me and Nigel the last year and a half, and he is finally playing like I've been waiting for him to play. I thought he looked really good. And I think what happened is they got really tight in the second half. They got really nervous that they were going to lose. But the first half, they're having fun. They're relaxed. Marcus McMarion's putting the ball in the air some, which we haven't seen this entire season.
Yeah, and I think you bring up a great point, because that's the mental part of it, right? And I think the actual schematic part of it was the fact that all of a sudden now, instead of playing zone, staying back, keeping things in front of them, which really didn't even work that well because Ryan Nall still had those long runs, they started to say, forget it, we're going to go up and we're going to press. We're going to get in the face of their wide receivers. We're going to make them work to release. And they were having trouble offense, especially at the wide receiver spot, just getting down the field. And times when they were able to get down the field, they looked and appeared as if they were covered. And so when you have a young quarterback like Marcus McMarion, he doesn't always feel comfortable, especially now I've got a lead. I know if I throw a pick here, now we're not up 24-3 anymore, 24-6. Now we're only up 24-14. If I throw a pick, that'll change everything. So he eats the football. And that just continues that downward spiral offensively.
All right, another look at one of the more memorable plays on Saturday in our Flat Tail Brewing Damn Good Moments.
Of 11, first down. The Beavers now with a double pass, a throwback from McMarion to Collins down the left sideline. Seth is gone. Nobody's going to catch him. 10, 5, and in. Touchdown, Beavers.
And we asked you on Twitter which receiver will have the best game versus Stanford. You voted and said Victor Bolden, overwhelmingly 49%. Ryan Nall second, Seth Collins in third. Do you guys
Ryan Nall a receiver? How did he get in this thing?
I'll tell you how. Jordan Villeman hasn't shown up all season.
And Nall has the third most
all
receiving
right, well, there's still Timmy Hernandez. There's still
exactly.
100.
Well, then they need to show up, and maybe they'll be in our poll next week. Do you agree that Victor Bolden will have the best game against Stanford?
Yeah, although, when Seth plays well, I'm never surprised. As Nigel likes to say, he's got that junkyard dog in him. Is that how you... Is that
JYD.
Say the JYD.
Oh,
JYD.
Sorry. I didn't know I was cool
acronym,
enough. I didn't know I was cool enough to use the acronym.
You are cool enough for the acronym.
Thank you. But Victor Bolden has, like we said, been playing so well with so much more confidence. I think that's huge for him. He talked with Nigel a couple weeks ago about that he hears from Brandon Cooks a lot. And Cooks is someone that outworked everyone, knew the playbook so well, and didn't let a bad game pull him down. But man, Nigel, when he gets going, the thing is, he's so fast. He's so fast. Victor Bolden is. The thing that was different about Brandon Cooks than everyone else is that Brandon Cooks was great. His acceleration after the catch was tremendous. He could create separation afterward. Bolden doesn't have exactly that, but just seeing him get going is nice.
Yeah, no question. I'm going to go ahead and take the other approach. I actually think Seth Collins is going to be the guy in this game for a couple reasons. One, 2 straight games, he had a total in 2 games of 1 catch. So what did the Beaver offensive staff do? They said, listen, we've got to get him going. So he had 6 catches, 83 yards, had his first touchdown, and so that got him going a little bit. And now you look at the fact that in this game, hopefully they can run the ball. I actually think they're going to have some success running the ball. The dagger, I think, is going to be Seth Collins because he is that JYD. He's that guy that in traffic can make that catch. Everybody was really surprised when Victor Bolden made made that catch in traffic. Not necessarily it has anything to do with Victor's skills, but he's not a big guy. So for him to win a jump ball is pretty rare. Seth is that guy who can do that, and I think if Marcus will trust him to make that catch in traffic, I think he's going to have an enormous game as well.
Is there a balance with something we brought up on Talking Beavers yesterday? I mean, is there a balance to how you have to use Seth Collins, or you can just...
Yeah.
Well, he's not going to be a quarterback anymore. Like, that's the bottom line. He could do something in a trick play, but if he wants to be a receiver and a good receiver, you got to keep him at receiver.
Yeah, it's one of those things that he's going to have to continue just to develop to understand releases. He's going to have to understand, especially when a defense says, you know what, forget it, we're going to get up in your face. And that's why I think he disappeared a little bit in that second half, along with other guys who've been playing receiver a lot more than him. When he understands how to release, how to reduce his surface area so people can't get hands on him, he's going to be deadly. And that's the part where, you know, he's just got to learn those things.
What about Ryan Nall in the passing game? Did you get him going?
Hey, look, Nigel loves Christian McCaffrey
We're expecting
because he can
a lot
do everything.
out of Ryan Nall.
So I wouldn't be surprised if Ryan could be, you know.
No, it wasn't that. It was just that the poll said like who's gonna have the best receiving game, and the other receivers weren't on the list. It's like, you know, if I'm 100,
the other receivers.
Oh, that's
you know what? Trying to fire up those younger guys, give them some motivation.
There you go. If they happen to be in the hotel right now,
they're watching
getting CSN
with satellite somehow because they're in Palo Alto.
Exactly.
Sure. But yeah, I mean, I think Hunter Jarman really. I mean, the first touchdown pass Marcus McMaryion threw against Utah was to Hunter Jarman. He has a little something different with Villeman. You know, for whatever reason, he has a little more trust. So hopefully those guys will figure it out because somebody's got to step up other than Victor and Seth.
All right, a little later in the show, Washington left out of the initial playoff rankings. We're going to get Mike Parker's take on whether or not the Huskies will be in at the end of the season. And up next, a change at quarterback for Stanford. Is it enough to fix the struggling offense? Stanford turning to Keller Christ to help jumpstart this offense. Last week against Arizona, David Shaw benching Ryan Burns, and in his debut played pretty well. What was kind of your take on that performance?
Well, going in the offseason, we all thought that Keller Christ was going to get the job. When Ryan Burns beat him out, it was really surprising. You know, Christ is a football kid through and through. Everyone expected him to be the guy. So this week, you know, they expected to be Christ, but the players told me at practice they're going to prepare for both. One thing that's hard, you know, is he did play well, but there's not a ton of film on him, Nigel.
I'm going to respectfully disagree. I mean, if Marcus McMaryion had the game that Keller Christ had against Arizona, nobody would say he played well. I mean, he was 14 of 30 for 104 yards against a defense that has been giving up 250 a game and is in the bottom third of the Pac-12. So he wasn't dealing with a bunch of guys who are, you know, their DB specialty, you know, that they're lockdown city. And so I just think, you know, you made this switch to a guy because I think the biggest issue with Ryan Burns was the fact that he was throwing interceptions and was turning the ball over. That was his issue. He had a 63% completion percentage, which isn't bad. It's pretty good in this conference. But he had more interceptions than he had touchdowns. They switched to Keller Christ, and now their completion percentage was down in 40%. And he still has, you know, he's thrown for 2 picks and 2 touchdowns. So they need a lot more out of him if they're going to be successful.
It would help if his receivers did something too.
This is true, which is the same thing we said about Marcus. But, I mean, at some point, 100 yards?
I just think the bottom line is that Kevin Hogan was a lot better than a lot of us realized. Not everyone. I think some people knew. And Shaw used to talk about that all the time, about how important Kevin Hogan was. And we're like, whatever, you got McCaffrey coming back, you'll be fine.
Well, I think
they have not been fine.
Yeah, what they started to lean on was so Kevin Hogan was an RPO guy, right? So he was a run-pass.
Which means run-pass option.
I was going to do it. Yeah, you got me. But yeah, he was a run-pass option guy. So he would walk up to the line of scrimmage almost every single play. And he had 2 plays he could go to every single play. He would stare at the defense and put their offense in a better situation. So you see a lot of teams, they will look to the sideline and let the coach do that. He was able to do that because of his experience level. And they can't do that right now. They don't have somebody who can come up, get everybody lined up, put them in the right play, and then execute that play. And I think they're really hurting because of that.
Anybody stand out to you in the Stanford receiving corps, or you think, again, the Beavers secondary is just
Trent Irwin has just not been what I thought he was going to be this season. And I think that's the consensus among people who follow the Pac-12, Nigel.
Yeah, no question. I mean, he was that guy that, you know, coming out of high school was that guy who, like, looked kind of like, gosh, is this guy a receiver? But then you saw him on the field and he was like, whoa. I mean, he could dominate people. And they were really excited about him coming out of fall camp. And for whatever reason, it just has not clicked. But I go back to a lot of it is because the quarterbacks haven't had time to throw. And this offense does not work if you can't run the football. And they haven't been able to run the football consistently.
The other problem, they don't have a tight end presence this year. And Stanford has always had a good tight end. And this year, they're nowhere to be found. They have that. They have a kid redshirting that I thought could play right away, but there were two kids in front of him. So they did decide to redshirt him. I'm blanking on his name. But I was kind of waiting for them to take his redshirt off because they need a tight end game. That's a huge part of their offense.
I mean, last year they had two drafted, Devin Juice and then Austin Hooper. So you go from having, spoils to not much coming out of the position at all. So you're absolutely right. I think that was a great point. Then once you lose that ability to, because those were the guys, and when time got tough, Kevin Hogan could go to Devin Kajus or to Hooper, and they were money in the bank. And right now, that's not there.
All right, playoff talk after the break. But right now, James is getting you ready for the Stanford game at the OSU Beaver store.
What's going on, Beaver Nation? This week, we're down at Palo Alto taking on a Stanford Cardinal. For those of you not traveling to the game and staying here in Oregon, we all need to combat that weather together. It's rainy, it's cold. The OSU Beaver store is here for you to help you battle those elements, okay? We're going to start off with this Columbia jacket. It's Omni Heat. Many people are excited about this because it actually uses your body temperature and your body heat as an advantage while also maintaining a light, athletic feel. It definitely doesn't feel like you're wearing a wet blanket on. It's going to keep you dry. It's going to keep you warm. Come down and get that. As you can see right here, we have some Oregon State fleeces. We have a black one. We have a gray one. We have multiple options of colors. Also, as you can see what I'm wearing, my personal favorite, very Oregonian of me, just a simple flannel, very stylish. It keeps me dry, keeps me warm. Wear it around town, let everybody know that I love my bees. Man, we could sit here all day and talk about all the different water repellent merchandise that we have. We have it for kids, we have it for women, we have it for men, young men, old men, we have it for everybody. So come on down and see for yourself and find what fits you, okay? We have everything you need here and more at the OSU Beaver store. Fans start here.
Now, some surprises in the initial college football playoff selection committee rankings. Washington is left looking in. Instead, Texas A&M getting the fourth and final spot for now, behind Alabama, Clemson, and Michigan. For his take on the playoff potential of Washington, we are bringing back in Mike Parker.
Well, thank you, Amanda. I know in Seattle there may have been a little bit of hand-wringing about the first four in the college football playoff. If it started now, the Huskies will be left out. But the key word there is if. It doesn't start now. The Washington Huskies have a chance, and I think if they run the table, will be in the Final Four, and rightly so. And it says here the Huskies will win. They'll win out. They have some challenges ahead, certainly, and the biggest one being going to Pullman in the Apple Cup. Mike Leach's team can beat anybody, anywhere, anytime when they get that offensive rhythm going. But the Huskies are so sound defensively in the back end with their Buda Baker-led secondary. They're good everywhere up front and across the board. They're balanced defensively. They're balanced offensively. And so right now, while there may be a little concern from Husky fans that they're being punished, and even the CFP people say the schedule has not been stout or taut enough, in the end, when they went out, they'll be in that playoff, and I think that's a good thing for the Pac-12.
All right, thank you, Mike. So do you agree with Mike? Is Washington in if they went out?
Yeah, absolutely. They're not going to leave out an undefeated Power 5, especially over Texas A&M that has a loss. And look, two things. First of all, this is exactly what the College Football Playoff Committee wants because we're all talking about this. We all tuned into it on ESPN. Second, look at the last 2 years. The first year, Ohio State, the first week of rankings, ranked number 16. They sneak into the playoff. They win the playoff. Last year, Oklahoma was number 14 the first week. They get into the playoff to lose in the semis. So I think the Huskies are going to be fine. The real question is what happens if they lose to Washington State? What happens if they lose in the Pac-12 championship game? That's what I would be more concerned about.
Washington
As an old Husky,
alum.
Nigel
As an
is
old Husky.
personally offended.
I am freaking out for a couple reasons.
Really?
And I think I have legitimate reason
4
to
weeks
freak out.
ago.
One, I think Lindsay's point is a great one. Ohio State, Oklahoma. This committee does not view Washington the same as Oklahoma and Ohio State. There is name recognition, national name recognition there that they don't give to the Pac-12 or to the University of Washington. And I know people say if they win out and they've got some challenging games, you know, you still got USC coming up on the schedule. You still have the Apple Cup, which could be a big-time ranked game, and the Pac-12 championship game. You know, Texas A&M still also has Mississippi State, Ole Miss, and they still have LSU to end the season if they don't get to the SEC championship game. And, you know, I kept listening to all these guys talk about non-conference schedule, and that was the part that blew my mind, was that you're going to punish Washington for their non-conference schedule. Portland State, Idaho, and Rutgers, a Big Ten team, a West Coast 1A team, and an FCS team. When Texas A&M has played the juggernauts of Prairie View A&M of FCS school, New Mexico State, who, by the way, was in the same conference as Idaho, and they played, I don't even know who, UTSA? Do you even know who UTSA's?
San Antonio.
Yeah, do you know what their
Just
mascot
came
is?
The Roadrunners?
The Roadrunners.
Oh, okay.
I mean, there's about 3 people in this entire bar who know
tell
who
you what
UTSA's
UTSA
mascot is, and yet they're getting
Okay.
credit for this.
It's okay.
I'm losing my mind
I
here.
can
I'm
tell.
serious. This is
You know,
crazy.
here's the thing, though. Chris Peterson is used to this. After years at Boise State, he knows how to harness this type of thing, turn it into motivation. I have watched that Washington team. They are for real. I think they are going to go undefeated through the Pac-12. They're not leaving out a conference champ, you guys. Conference championships is like the single most important criteria to getting into the playoff. So if Washington takes care of business, a big part of that is staying healthy, which, you know, you don't have any control over. But everything's going to be fine. I really think that I'm kind of a conspiracy theorist more and more. I think they just did this so we would talk about it.
I mean, college football is the most talked about sport out there nationally, you know, behind the NFL. So, I mean, I don't know why they would need to add any publicity to this thing. And I want you to really think not like a Northwesterner, not like a West Coast person, but what is going to bring more wow factor to your resume late in the season? Wins over Ole Miss, who had Alabama on the ropes, and LSU, or win against a USC team who's already lost 3 games and got the brakes beat off them by Alabama. Or Washington State team that nobody even really knows about. And what they do know is they lost to an FCS school and Boise State in the first 2 weeks. So
There's no doubt that East Coast bias is a real thing. Like, there's no question. I mean, Christian McCaffrey didn't win the Heisman last year, and he was the best player in college football. They're going to be okay. I really believe that.
Nigel does not.
And it's not that I don't believe that they are one of. I believe they're the second best team in the country.
I think they can beat Alabama.
Yeah, I do too. I mean, the way that they play will give people fits. But it's one of those things that, I mean, if it's really about strength of schedule and quality wins, they have just as many quality wins on the table, if not better quality wins, and they're already ahead of Washington. And you can say all you want about conference champions. They also talk about non-conference. And how do you say that Prairie View A&M, UTSA, New Mexico State is a better non-conference schedule than what Washington played?
All right, much more to come here on #Beavers Football. Up next, we wrap things up and get our ingredients to victory. Stick around.
I'm going to calm down.
Hey, welcome back to #Beavers Football. Of course, we have you covered for Beavers coverage right here on CSN. Talking Beavers a different time next week. We'll wrap up the Stanford game Monday at 9 p.m. And, of course, don't forget CSN Game Day on Saturday, 9 a.m. They'll get you ready for the game. Time now for the Papa John's ingredients to victory. And don't forget, you win with Touchdown Tuesday. Just use the promo code Beaver7 for 50% off your online order. All right, Lindsay, we'll start with you.
Okay, we've talked about him all day. Christian McCaffrey, you got to hold him. You got to contain him. You're not going to stop him. So can you hold him to 135 all-purpose yards? That's the number, I think. He's averaging almost 183, so 135 is still a pretty good game for everyone else. For McCaffrey, it's low. And then Oregon State did a great job establishing the run last weekend against Washington State. I want to see that again in the first half. 150 rushing yards the first half.
Nigel.
I think those are excellent. because I pretty much have
Almost
the same
exact
thing.
same thing.
I was kind of thinking of something a little bit different, though, in terms of contain Christian McCaffrey. It's more about the special teams game, in my opinion, when you look at how he was against Kansas State, the damage he's done to USC. I think USC might actually put a trophy. I know we have a USC grad on camera, so I don't want to make her mad.
Talk
Lindsay's
about it
between
with
us
anyone.
right now. But they might have to erect a statue of Christian McCaffrey on USC's campus because of the damage he's done to them, in particular in the return game. Because you have a guy who can make explosive plays in space, and there's non-starters on the field. So that's the part that I'd be really concerned with. The other thing is offensively run the ball consistently, not just the first half like they did against Washington State. I would think they can average 6 yards a game, or excuse me, 6 yards a carry when you consider the fact they did better than that against Washington State, who was the #1 rush defense in the Pac-12, and against Utah, almost 5.5, who's #3, Stanford #5 rush defense in the conference.
Obviously, we know what Nall can do. Do you imagine we might see some other guy, our peers, Tim Cook, get some touches this week?
Yeah, I definitely think so. I think that, you can see Stanford is so physical. They're so tough. They beat a lot of guys up. Players come to the sideline and are pretty sore, so you might need to get some extra bodies in there.
Yeah, I think that's just the beauty of the spread. What the spread can do is take average linemen and make them look great, because you can use some of defensive linemen's momentum to get them out of making plays. And if Ryan starts going downhill, Stanford's going to have problems.
All right, big game tomorrow for Oregon State. Of course, Game Day will get you ready live tomorrow morning at 9 a.m., and we'll see you back here on Monday for Talkin' Beavers. Have a great night.